Good morning, Chameleon Wranglers. Welcome to this wonderful Saturday afternoon. It's been a week since we've talked, and I've done a lot of thinking on the chameleon side. And if you're on my Patreon, or if you're on my Patreon, you know I've been active with throwing out the ideas and talking about the issues facing us in the chameleon world. And so that's what came. That's what came of this latest podcast episode. And I just realized that I didn't release it as a podcast. I only released it on YouTube, which was a huge oversight on my part. And I'm going to fix that this afternoon. Very sorry to everybody, but we talked about stress points. So hello, Howard. Hey, Ryan's here. Genevieve, hello, and uh, and Gabriel, and Jenny. Okay, yeah, Jenny, go get that coffee real fast. And you know what? I'm actually getting my coffee from Yvette. She is off on. It's her birthday today, yay! And she's going to get her her free coffee from Starbucks. So she's bringing me back something. And so today, it's not going to be brewed here. It's going to be straight from Starbucks. So we're going to get to see the Starbucks logo. Oh, France. We've got France here. Hello. And Stephanie's got her fancy latte. Excellent, excellent. Uli, hello. Yes, Uli. Oh, have you seen she talked about plant envy. Did you see my new Nepenthes Miranda? Oh, so beautiful. The pictures are needing a little bit of humidity, but as soon as I get this one in its cage with its fogger and all that wonderful stuff, in bright light, it's going to snap too. Oh no, Natalie. Yes, it's Saturday again, and I am very glad that you're here. Oh, James, wonderful. Thank you for being here. Rick, hello. Okay, I am sorry, Gabriel. On Tuesday, I was gone. I meant to. I was literally sequestered, but I meant to make an announcement, and I didn't make an announcement. I'm very sorry, but next Tuesday, I will be on. What Gabriel's talking about is the Tuesday night live stream on Instagram, and I missed it this week, and I'm very sorry for everybody. Very sorry. Howard's going to be sending me Death Wish coffee. Uh-oh. Sean, very good to see you here. Sean McNeely, McZoo. If anybody went and saw the Thursday night live stream that I usually do with Sean, he had a wonderful experience where his stream cut out, and so the guests were left to do the show by themselves. Genevieve says, so you didn't block us on Tuesday. Oh my goodness. I felt so bad that I didn't make an announcement. I was just kicking myself. But the story was that I am writing a project. It's all about podcasting as such. And my wife said, you need to get out of the house and fix that and finish that. And so she literally sent me away and said, you are not allowed to do anything. But I should have announced it, and I forgot. I meant to. Let's see. Natalie's asking, oh, hello, Katrina and Juan. Do we get to see you pour the coffee from the Starbucks cup into your chameleon cup for authenticity? You know what? I should probably do that. I'll see if my wife is good enough to bring my Chameleon Academy cup. So everybody, okay. I am sorry that boy, I really fell down on the job last week. I didn't do the Tuesday, and then I thought I loaded up the podcast to the regular RSS feed, but I only loaded it up to YouTube. So yes, everybody. YouTube has this new podcast thing. They're trying to compete with Spotify, who's done a huge investment in podcasting. And so right now it's kind of a video podcast thing to where you can load up your podcast on YouTube, and it'll be eventually soon shown on YouTube Music as an audio podcast. But you have to load it as a video file. And then I learned it gets thrown into your entire video catalog. So people coming and looking for videos now are all of a sudden faced with this audio only a show, which is strange in a way. Now, it's not as ridiculous as it sounds at first because there are so many people that just listen to YouTube. And I've had so many people say, "Why aren't you on YouTube with your podcast?" I said, "Well, it's an audio only." Well, and they say, "Well, I don't watch YouTube. I just let it play in the background." So I guess this isn't as big of a stretch as one might think. Anyway, I've been doing it to where I do a video introduction and then I have the podcast. It's an audio podcast with just a picture, and people seem to like it. I was very surprised. I thought there would be a huge backlash against it, but people really like it, and so I will continue to do that. Although you're going to be seeing more and more video aspects to it. So, um, ugh. Yes, I know, I know. I have come here seeking mercy and forgiveness for the entire from the entire group. So, and by the way, it's a whole YouTube, Spotify thing. They are changing the landscape of podcasting, hopefully for the better. We'll see. But this is we're talking chameleons today. If you're interested in what's going on with YouTube, Spotify, and all that, I actually have a live show for the Reptile Entrepreneur podcast, which is tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific. So Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on YouTube on the Reptile Entrepreneur channel, and we're going to be talking about all this news, what's going on in TikTok, in Congress, YouTube versus Spotify, artificial intelligence for content creators. And my guest is Ryan Tran, who you guys know from Mighty Morphin Reptiles on YouTube. So if you're interested in all that kind of stuff, definitely come see me tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific on the Reptile Entrepreneur channel. So anyway, let's get talking about chameleons. Hello, Joanne. And hello, Chris and Patrick. So Ryan's saying, what the heck's the topic of today? Well, the topic of today is we are going to be talking about all the little stress points. That was in the, at least the people who saw me on YouTube. Uh, what we're talking about is how all the little things that cause stress add up, and how this is one of the most uh, dangerous things that a chameleon keeper can run into, because when we're looking for problems, we're looking for things that have immediate effect. So, oh, my chameleon is dehydrated. My chameleon is overheated and is panting in light colors. We've got to fix the immediate problem. So this is what we're generally faced with. The problem with chronic stress is that it's a small thing, and chameleons can live their entire life with small amounts of chronic stress. They do this in the wild easily. They have a parasite load. That is a small amount of physical stress, and they survive it just fine. Uh, a day where they have a week where it's unseasonably warm, so they don't really get a good night's sleep. That's a little bit of added stress onto it. And then maybe they don't eat for a couple of days. That's an added physical stress. And once they eat, that goes away. Once they get good sleep, the temperature goes down. They get good sleep, that goes away. And so all of life is us uh, taking up little bits of stress and then getting rid of the stress. And it's not just chameleons, it's us as human beings. Every living being who lives in this imperfect world has to go through that. And so that's what's important for us to realize, is that our chameleons in captivity have these same stresses that go up and down and up and down. The problem with captivity is so much of this is constant. We have a much less variable environment within the cage. And so if there is a stressor in the cage, it's constant, month after month after month. And that takes up, say, 10 of your stress points. And then you add on a cat walking by every day. That's another 10 stress points. And then eventually, Say the chameleon has 100 stress points that it can handle in its tolerance range, and you keep it at 95 stress points. All it takes is something small and something that you would never think would bother your chameleon, and it's just 10 stress points that pushes your chameleon over. The immune system goes out, the chameleon gets sick, maybe dies, and then you go away to talk about how chameleons just die for no reason whatsoever. And so this is why it's important for us chameleon herpetoculturists to really pay attention to all the small stuff. And that's why it's important for us to continually refine our husbandry so we can reduce all of those stressors. Can't get rid of all the stress in life. Chameleons are built to handle stress, but us as caretakers, it's our job to reduce it as much as is possible. So, all right, let's go see what people are saying here. Bill, we can't go back to monthly subscriptions of Reptile Magazine and chat rooms. Oh, yes, I remember all of that. Let's see. Ryan's saying my male Ustlets is having a hard time adjusting, not taking food. Got great conditions, same as the females are thriving in. Yep, yep. Well, and in this point, we need to look at say we assume like Ryan's very experienced in this. So when he says he's got great conditions, I believe he's got great conditions. But there's something bothering his male Austerlets. And every chameleon's going to have that special thing. Maybe it's a parasite load. And I don't know this particular situation. So I'm talking in generalities. Maybe it's a parasite load. Maybe it's a an organ problem from importation, like dehydration can really rack the kidneys. And so these are some things that you may not be able to see. And then there's other things in the cage. Maybe for whatever reason, it doesn't like the color yellow, and you have a yellow banner on the other side of the room. We don't know these kind of things, but we all have to be detectives in figuring out what's bothering each individual chameleon, and it's different. That's why we have to be good at what we're doing. Hey, Steve's here. Um, uh, let's see. You know quite a bit about chameleons. Are good at knowing how to convey that information. Why wouldn't people be interested in listening? That's right. What's wrong with these people out there? Um, And let's see, Jenny's saying, I love the idea with health points you were talking about. Yeah, and I think that's a way that we can understand this. It's a very simplistic way, obviously. Obviously, it's an incredibly simplistic way, but it's at least a way to get the concept across. Let's see. Katrina's saying, I've asked about my stunted veiled before. I love him, but I'm afraid he will never be what I want him to be. Will he ever get big? Probably not. If he's stunted during his growth spurts, he'll probably never get as big as he would have otherwise. And so you will have a mini veiled chameleon. Um, although I'm a little bit concerned about will never be what I want him to be. We have to accept them for what they are, just like dogs, human children. Do our best. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes things don't go the way we want them to, but then we just accept them for who they are. And so, I'm assuming you mean you want him to be healthy. The good news is that he'll be healthy, even if he's stunted, the stunted growth. They'll live long lives. I've had stunted chameleons before. They do just fine. They're just smaller, and so I wouldn't worry about it. Just keep feeding him, and if he grows, he grows. But once they hit the adult stage, they start growing very slowly. They don't have those growth spurts, and so if he's hit that adult stage and he's small, then you're going to have a mini veiled chameleon, which is a I I got to tell you, yeah, okay. I won't talk too much more about that other than I've had some really great chameleons that were smaller. Um, Gabriel saying, any tips to keep birds away from my chameleon cages? If you're talking about outdoors, uh, unfortunately, anything that you're going to put up like CDs to shine in the light or owl or something. You got to do something that doesn't move, or else it'll freak out the chameleons too. But yeah, that's a real tough one. If you're outdoors, well, I'm assuming you're outdoors. People usually don't have flocks of birds in their house. Um, yep, everybody, here it is. It is Starbucks. I don't have the mug today, so we're just going to we're going to be casual here. And Howard makes a very good point here when we're talking about those stresses. Don't think it's additive, but exponential. The key is to keep stress points to a minimum and mostly naturally occurring stresses. Uh, and what Howard's talking about, which is absolutely correct, is you don't if you're putting stress upon a whole lot of stress, it's not just another 10 points. If it was your only stress, it would be 10 points. But if it's on top of everything else, they all kind of build into something bigger than their individual parts. And I think it's very easy to understand this concept because we humans, and by the way, everything we're talking about chameleons, it's amazing how much of it applies to every living thing on Earth, including human beings. But so we're talking about one stressor. You know how we are as humans. If we've had a bad day and we're thinking about things, and we've got all of this stress built up, and then somebody puts one little thing on top, it seems like the world. It is just way bigger. We've blown it out of proportion, and that's because it's on top of everything else. And that's what Howard is saying there. And I think it's absolutely correct. And something is that if you put a little stress on a whole mountain of stress, not only can it tip or make the whole thing fall down, it has a greater weight because it's on top of all of that other stress. And it's just another way of saying we need to get rid of all those just the little stresses that come in. That's yep. Genevieve is saying stress that breaks the camel's back. Yeah, and hey, and then okay, Jenny's coming in talking about her chameleon, um, who's doing just fine with being stunted, and Ryan's talking about his imported Ustalets. Tents are great, so he's got little tents that keep them visually isolated. Um, and seeing a person is a big stressor. Yeah, it's amazing. Um, it's amazing how wild caught chameleons, they're just so diverse in their responses to a human being. And as we know, they don't know what a human being is. They haven't developed millions of years of evolution to tell them this is what a human being means. They assume that we're just a big thing. Are we a tree that moves, or are we a predator? And every chameleon makes that their own decision. So yeah, it's every chameleon is going to react differently. Oh. Jose is saying, how can I tell my female panther chameleon has reached adulthood? It's really hard to say that for certain. I You can easily go with when they get their adult colors. Sometimes that's hard to determine. You could go with when they reach their adult size. Well, when's that? Well, you'll know it when they stop growing. And so after they've been an adult for a little while, you say, okay, they've stopped growing. So it's everybody can give you an opinion. Nobody can give you an exact this is when. And since every panther chameleon is going to grow at a different rate, we can just give you a basic idea of, well, maybe 9 months, 6 to 9 months if they're really growing, 9 to 12 months if they're growing slow, something like that. Something like that. Um, let's see. Natalie's saying, I can see coming up in the. I'm getting. I'm getting my chops burned in the. I know it's coming up in the chat, but let's go ahead and procrastinate by talking with Natalie's thing. Um, Keeping my Maggie's cage in front of my window, right in front of my patio where I put out food for the birds. There's a residential patio chipmunk and squirrels. Should I not have her in the window? This all depends on how often they are there and really how Maggie deals with these. And it's really difficult with chameleons because you can't tell when they have these little stress points because they naturally just stay in one place. And when they're threatened, they freeze in one place unless they think that they've been, unless they think that their camouflage is blown and they have been spotted, then they run away. So it's very difficult to say, is this chameleon just resting in place because he's just fine, or is he resting in place because he's threatened and doesn't want to be seen? And it looks exactly the same to us human beings. And so you're going to have to make a decision. Um, there is one conversation I had with Philippe de Vaugelet, very insightful. He said, yes, things are stressful, but life is stress. And he's right. There are a lot of stresses in life, and it may be healthy to have a little bit of stress. So, there, then add that into the mix because it gets things flowing. What's not healthy is the chronic stress. And so, what I would say, if you have birds, chipmunks, and stuff in the window, make sure, number one, that those are lower than the chameleon. So make sure the chameleon can perch above it, above all of that activity. Has a bunch of plants that they can hide behind if they feel threatened. And then and then watch the interaction. I this will I got to be very careful how I say this, but I think it is healthy for chameleons, everything, to have occasional stresses. It wakes us up. It gets our blood moving. It uses the parts of the body that are meant for survival, which um, yeah, I haven't figured out how I'm going to describe this so people don't jump scare their chameleon just to get a rise out of them. Um, but I think a hawk flying overhead every now and then, a plane flying overhead every now and then is healthy. It keeps the chameleon alert. It's enrichment in a way that's not dangerous and it's not chronic. On the other hand, having a ceiling fan go on above its cage, that's chronic. That is not a stress spike. That is a constant stress, and that is something we want to get rid of. Plane going overhead, a bird flying by, that is natural what they're living with. And so that's just a stress spike. It goes away. And so I think that is okay. So look at your situation and see, are these little stress spikes? Can the chameleon get away and hide if it wants to? And if so, yeah, put them, keep them there. Um, Guys, I actually looked into dad jokes, but I totally forgot everything I looked into. And for those who are wondering, I promised Jenny that Jenny, who is claiming innocence, uh, I committed to Jenny that I would have a dad joke available, and that just kept going on and on and on and on. And so, eventually, I'm going to have to bring a dad joke to the show. To the show. Let's see. Katrina saying, I don't think he knew who I was, but when a stranger went into his room, he hides. Yep, yep. Your chameleon will get to know you, and you will not be a stress point to them. They will be familiar with you. Hello, Fish Dreams. If you have any questions about chameleons, go ahead and put it in the chat, or else you can just lurk away. Um, have you put Spanish moss in any of your cages? If so, how do you fasten them? I did at one point. I don't know that I would recommend it. There wasn't any real danger in it, but I don't know. I just hung it on my dragon ledges. Obviously, I for those who don't know, I have a caging company, the Chameleon Caging Company, and I invented these things called dragon ledges, which are these ledges that are on the side of the cage, and you can attach branches and plants and That's what I put my Spanish moss on. So it just kind of hung over the side of the cage. I don't know if it's a danger with the chameleon getting, zapping a cricket that's on it and then getting a strand in its mouth. And then if it can't cut the strand, it just keeps trying to swallow this thing. I mean, I've seen that kind of thing happen with chameleons. So I don't, um, yeah, I don't recommend it. But on the same side, I'll say, yeah, I did it and nothing happened. Um, let's see. Okay, we have someone talking about Lake Superior. Interesting. And Howard was not needing to be asked to remind me of my commitment. He just decided it was a fun thing to do. Yes, this is my audience. They love me very much. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and try a little bit of this. Oh, that is good. Now, we'll talk about cohabitation in a little while, and the stress points from that. But first, let's talk to Fish Dreams with the first question. What is a typical daily diet for a veiled chameleon female around 3 years old? Are hornworms okay daily? What supplements are necessary? Okay, these are some, by the way, these are some basics that if you go to chameleonacademy.com, there's a profile section, and I have a huge detailed description about how to take care of veiled chameleons, and that is definitely the place to go. But I will say overall, a good daily diet is actually every other day, 3 to maximum 5 feeder insects every other day. The problem with veiled chameleon females, for anybody thinking about getting a veiled chameleon female, is that veiled chameleons will eat and eat and eat. They are eating machines. They will overeat to the point where they're obese, and that becomes life-threatening to the females. If you ever seen how easy it is for a female veiled chameleon to get up to 60 eggs to 100 eggs, that's too much. That's a product of captivity, and that is life-threatening. So you need to do not feed. Once a veiled chameleon is an adult, and at 3 years they're an adult, you don't feed them as much as they will eat. You feed them three, well, all the way up to 5 maximum feeder insects a day. Even 5 is pushing it. As far as hornworms, that's a lot. You're going to get very, very soupy poop out of that. I wouldn't use a hornworm as an every feeding insect. So I would definitely vary that up a bit. See, Born Again Farm Girl says, I love chameleons, but I have a deep need for it to love me. Oh yeah, and it gets better. And I'm a hugger too. So, well, Born Again Farm Girl, to I'm afraid to be the bearer of bad news that chameleons just aren't huggers, and they're not social. They do not have a social structure in the wild, so they don't know what quotes love is. Love is something that we humans and pack animals have: dogs, cats, dolphins, elephants, cockatoos. We all have this sense of love, which is what binds us together as a community, and it strengthens the community because we derive a benefit from community. So we have this very strong love emotion. And you go to movies, the greatest thing is to give up yourself for the community. um, Chameleons don't have community. They're just isolated. They just live alone. Yes, I mean, they run into other chameleons, but they don't form family groups. And so they have absolutely nothing, that no understanding in their brain of what a relationship would be or affection would be. That's just not part of what they are. And so, uh, yeah, I am afraid the chameleons just isn't the right pet for you if you really want that interaction. You need something that has a family group so they can transfer that part of the brain onto you and say, okay, now you're part of my family group. Let's see. And Born Again Farm Girl says emerald tree skinks are on my list. Yep, that's more in line with what you're looking for. But that said, everything we talk about here in how to take care of a chameleon, you can learn. Everything we're talking about, stress points, is applicable to every reptile, every living being. So uh, I frame everything that I'm talking about with a chameleon wrapper. But I've got so many people from all different reptile groups that come in and they can benefit because the things we talk about are just so similar across all living beings and especially reptiles. So you are absolutely welcome. Please stick around, and it will be what we talk about here is going to be applicable to your emerald tree skinks. So Perry Planeta made it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. The world is upside down. Hello. All right. Just going through all the chats here. And Fish Dreams has a lot to learn. Checking out the profile. Yeah, and Fish Dreams, the thing is, there is so much more that goes into keeping chameleons than just a simple answer. And this is how we get in, and I think that's the same for every reptile. And the wonderful thing about where we're going as a community is we're realizing that the reptiles are so complex that everything, if we want to be good with the reptiles, we need to dive in and understand the entire life cycle of this other living being. And so that it's wonderful that the community, generally speaking, is moving in that direction to recognizing that. So my advice, take your time. There's a lot to learn there. Don't get overwhelmed. I mean, I look at the chameleonacademy.com website. I think it's 250 pages. It's just ridiculous in size, and I still have more to put in there. So much more to put in there that a beginner coming in that's going to go, what the, how am I going to get through all this? Well, I made it into a class format, so you can go in at the beginning, like the chameleon basics, and then you can just slowly work your way through. But don't get overwhelmed. If you love chameleons, it's very possible to have a healthy chameleon with a long life. Just be patient, slowly get through it all. If you love podcasts, go to the Chameleon Academy podcast and you just start with episode 1 and you just work through all of them. Every time you go to work, just get your chameleon fix, and it builds. It builds. The good news is we have enough information that we can reliably keep chameleons healthy for long, healthy lives. Let's see. Getting a carpet chameleon juvenile shipped to my house tomorrow. Any tips on what to do before putting him in the bare bottom enclosure? I just put together a cage that's got a lot of plants, and there is no difference. You just treat them like you would an adult, as large of a cage as you can, heavily planted, and it's amazing how well they will do. So you really don't, just leave them alone for a while. I guess the biggest thing I will say is, number one, don't worry about it if he spends a, a couple of days, a day or two, doing laps around the cage. They got to figure out where they're living. That's normal. And don't hold them. That'll stress them out. Don't let them settle in. Yeah, of course, I always say don't hold chameleons, but let them settle in, especially at the beginning. Bill, how much does not giving the chameleon both a wet and dry season impact the chameleon? Has there been any concrete studies with more than anecdotal evidence? And if we create a dry season, how do we do it safely? Oh, Howard. Howard, that is the next frontier for chameleon herpetoculture. It's figuring out the dry season, and I started my personal exploration of the dry season last year. At the beginning of last year, I did that interview with you and Edwards, and we talked because he lived in Madagascar during the dry season. Very few people go to Madagascar during the dry season because you can't see chameleons. You want to go, I mean, they go if they're tourists because they don't get rained on all the time. But we chameleon people, we don't go during the dry season because it's a lot easier to find chameleons during the rainy season. But we were talking about how giving a dry season rest is probably the next huge thing for us to learn about to generate longevity in chameleons. And so there are no answers for you right now. That is what I personally am working on. It is my biggest growth point for me personally, and of course I bring the community with me, is to figure out how do we implement a dry season so we get all of the benefits from the dry season, but none of the life-threatening aspects of it. Right now, I suspect that it's going to be just taking the temperatures down a little bit. One of my interviews with Michael Nash, and that's what he does for his company. And so Michael Nash has been doing this for a while, so he's very experienced, a very valuable insight there. So a lot of people are doing it, but the question is, and Parsons people, yeah, they know about this because they have a brumation. Their Parsons going to brumation, so we all have little pieces of the dry season, and my goal is to be able to standardize that. And I could we double the lifespan of our chameleons by giving them a 4 to 6 month cooler period. I don't know, but it's an exciting new frontier for chameleon herpetoculture, and that is what I am working on personally, and I will bring you all along with what I find uh, uh, regarding this. So yeah, please stay tuned. Stay tuned. Um, is there an age limit from which you can sell a veiled or panther chameleon? Well, there's no upper limit. I would sell, and the age is I would sell them when they're old enough to. Uh, I don't know. It's really difficult to say. Both veiled and panther chameleons. Generally, we said 3 months, but that's not a good time. Is not a good way to measure whether they're ready to go to new home again, because it's really size, how big they've grown. I'm gonna say what, 2 inches, 3 inches. I don't know. You know what? Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to give you a really good answer right now because I've been thinking. I've been thinking about how we should do that, and I'll talk to my panther chameleon people and see what they've been doing lately. Jose Herrera saying, "What do you think about bioactive and chameleons?" It for the larger chameleons, panthers, veils, Jacksons, bioactive is completely it's something completely different. So if you do it within your chameleon cage, you've got two hobbies going on at the same time, but they are not benefiting from it. You get some of those smaller ones, smaller species or babies or species that need higher humidity, and they will definitely benefit. Cristatus loves the higher humidity. The small columas will benefit from it. Babies benefit from bioactive. And if we're talking about bioactive actually having life in the soil, you can get all those benefits from naturalistic, meaning soil, lots of plants. If you're talking about bioactive in the truest sense, being that it actually has springtails and isopods, it's a fun thing to do. Whether having life in the soil directly benefits the chameleon, I don't know. It doesn't hurt, except if it goes wrong because you don't have the skills to keep bioactive, and there's skills needed for that, which is why I say, um, take on one thing at a time. But I guess so. You see, there's a lot of different aspects to the answer to this question. Um, Say hello, Roger Lesasher, and Okay, we got a bunch of people saying hello. We got a lot of activity in the chat. Everybody's saying hello to each other. I am very glad to see community. Everybody having fun. That is perfect. Um, okay, well, there's interesting. Ryan saying light spectrum is as important as temperature and humidity, in my opinion. Well, we'll see. I'm I don't know. I am I am wondering if we can do just a dry season, trigger a dry season with just a temperature shift, because I would rather have them hydrated during the dry season. I don't want to. It's kind of strange us having a dry season and having them still hydrated, but if I can trigger the dry season cool down with just temperature and not uh, make it so dry that they have to get a little bit dehydrated, I'll be a lot happier. But light spectrum, I'll put it on the list to check out. Uh, and so, everybody, what we're talking about is when there's a dry season in Madagascar or any place, the chameleons, like we'll take the panther chameleons and other chameleons in Madagascar. When the dry season comes, it is cooler and it's dry. So it's not hot like we would expect in the uh, northern latitudes. So, and what happens is the chameleons, a lot of them die because they dehydrate, not enough food, they're dehydrated. A lot of them they'll go into a brumation. Some of them will get into holes in the ground uh, to survive the harsh dry season. Now, the danger is okay, they don't have food, they don't have water. That's not good. But they get a cool down, as in their body rests. So they get a rest for 4 to 6 months out of the year. And so the question is, what does it take to trigger that rest period in their bodies? We don't know. No. So Ryan's saying the light spectrum, maybe. Temperature goes down, maybe. Dryness, maybe. Hope not. But what is it that's necessary to get them into that state? Because I'd love it if it was something that was beneficial, and then I could take away everything that's not beneficial. Oh, let's see. Kiki's saying, are there known positives of stimulating a dry season correctly in captivity, or is it just on the basis that this is the climate they occupy in the wild? Wild. Um, there are. We can see some. We can see that they do it. What the benefits are yet to be determined. The reason why it's worth exploring is because anything that gets them closer to their natural condition that is not dangerous and life threatening, there is reason you just assume until you're proven otherwise that not only did they develop to tolerate that, but also to be dependent upon that. And in the people that I've talked to who work with dry season and implementing a dry season, it provides a slowdown period for the chameleon. And presumably, that would extend their life. Don't have evidence of that yet, but in this exploration, as you see in this podcast, in this show, we do a lot of how can we get closer to the natural condition. And the reason is, it is a good reason, that the closer we are to what their bodies were evolved to depend upon, the longer the life they'll have. It's solid. It's a solid logic. And so that's why we're pushing it. Right now, we're determining exactly how beneficial it will be. So, yeah, just stay tuned on that. Stay tuned on that. So let's see. Gabriel says, wouldn't mind doing bioactive for my Usuleti if it turns out they needed a dormant dry season. Otherwise, no way. Yeah, well, uh, Gabriel, I am hoping that implementing a dry season would not be dangerous. The way it is in Madagascar, yeah, it gets dangerous, but if they don't need to be dehydrated to get that rest, then we're definitely not doing the dehydration thing. Uh, my working theory hypothesis, what I am hoping, what I'm going to work with, is just taking the temperature down a bit, and then having total fog for hydration. So just fogging during the early mornings, and that would be it. So they would get the baseline hydration that they need. They would get the lower temperatures, but they wouldn't have the danger of dehydration. And so that's what I'm going to be working on. And by the way, you'll notice it, you'll see in a couple of weeks I'm going to do a double episode on fogging and what we've learned about fogging in both in nature as well as in captivity. And so that I think that has a critical uh, place in implementing a successful and safe dry season. Um, and by the way, the dry season, the ebb of flow, on some chameleons, it's critical to trigger their breeding. They're breeding them to breed. So this is something that we, as advanced chameleon herpetoculturists, and if we want to be breeders of species, we have to understand the dry season intimately, and we have to understand the ebbs and flows of their seasons. So for people like that, serious breeders, it's not a it's not a luxury. This is a necessity to be successful. And there's so many species that we're not successful with, and this is probably the reason why. And so we need to get much better at the ebbs and flows of the seasons. Let's see. In regards to wet dry season, would that be something you would apply to baby chameleon, regardless of what time they were actually born in? Like mags hatched as the dry season started. Uh, the babies are timed in nature to hatch at the wet season. So for babies, no matter when they're born in the calendar year, when they're hatched in the calendar year, you treat it like the wet season. So if we started implementing these um, uh, 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 dry season conditions in standard husbandry, it would be when they become an adult. So yeah, babies would never, but I'll never say never. Okay. So somebody out there is going to say, I've got evidence. Generally speaking, babies hatch in the rainy season. So they have abundance of water and food. And that's how they grow very quickly. And they don't have to deal with a dry season until they are adult. Um, Listen to your podcast with Rapashi, and even though it didn't talk about a dry season, vitamin A and D and vitaminosis, it sometimes somehow relates some way to a dry season. Yeah, I don't know about. I haven't thought about nutrition as for a dry season. Um, I do intend to do some studies in Madagascar. I don't know what kind of answers I'll get from that, but it's a good question. What do they eat during the dry season? How much do they eat? And is fasting a part of the dry season and a part of um, the slowdown? I I wouldn't go there immediately. I would not. I'm a little much more cautious. I will more likely play with humidity and temperature before I will start playing with fasting and dehydration as a necessary part of the dry season. I don't know if I would. What would I'd have to get very far along in understanding all of this and having such a firm grasp on it to start playing with dehydration and fasting. But it's a good question as to how nutrition and vitamins and such play into that. Um, Joanne says, "Looking forward to the fogging time." You know what? I just had this interview. I'm bringing on Peter Nechas, who was the one who really pushed it, and and I brought him on. We had a discussion to go over all the latest understandings, and he's been doing some. He's actually been doing some experiments on real chameleons, which we were going to talk about. And so I think this is good for all of us to acknowledge and try out some sort of fogging. Anyway, if you want to, if you are obsessed with going forward in our herpetoculture, this is something to do. So let's see. Natalie's answer. What is this? Let Bill answer this, huh? One of the lights over my cage is purple. What would that cause? Supposedly, it's to help with vision. Natalie, I have never heard of purple lights helping with vision. I don't understand why it would. Purple is just one part of the natural spectrum, of the visible spectrum, which comes from the 6500K lights, which combines imperfectly, but as well as we can, all of the spectrum of the light, the visible spectrum. Now, chameleons can see into the ultraviolet. I don't know, maybe somebody misinterpreted what that meant, but if your light is purple, then it is, and if I understand it correctly, it's isolating the purple light from the full spectrum. I don't, yeah, I don't see how that is for chameleons. So, Bill, I hear the ice in that coffee. All right. I'll drink it over here. Yes, yes. Nice, sensitive microphone right here. um, but oh yeah, well back to that. Yeah, Natalie. Generally speaking, actually, I stay away from colored lights. I just go with there's nothing no benefit for chameleons that I know of, and yeah, I haven't really heard of there being a benefit. So anyway, Stephanie saying, "Are panther chameleons known to dig a hole in the ground and sleep through a dry season?" Yes, that is a report that totally shocked me when I heard that. And then I saw a study where some Mediterranean chameleons would uh, overwinter in cow dung or something like that. So yeah, chameleons. The thing with panther chameleons is that they are wide ranging. They have a huge range, and they are anywhere from 0 meters sea level up to 1,000 meters of sea level. So panther chameleons experience a wide range of environmental conditions when you have that. Even during the wet and dry seasons, they will have different conditions across Madagascar. And so, but yes, they some panther chameleons have been known to dig holes in the ground and sleep through a dry season. And what's the benefit of that? Well, it's moist, it's humid down there in the ground, and so that's how they're going to survive. Now they don't all do that, as far as I know. Like I said, I'm right at the cusp. I'm just starting to learn this. I started really focusing on the dry season last year, and in terms of learning things, it takes years and years to think about it, plan it, test it, work with other people, and so you guys are at the starting of trying to figure all of this out. So you're seeing it happen in real time, and I'll let you know as I come up with stuff, and other people are doing it too. So we'll all move forward together. Let's see. Can't wait to see what you find, Bill. I'm looking forward to potentially being able to extend my chameleon's life. Maybe it's the same way chameleon eggs go under dive. Oh, yeah, yeah, I mean, that's exactly the reason why chameleons go, have a diapause. It's so they when the diapause breaks, that is the sign that the weather is changing, and so the wet season is about to come, and so that tells the eggs, "Up, it's time to come up." Let's see. Fogging has totally upped my care game. My geckos really enjoy the humid nights and drier days. Yeah, guys, this is not just chameleons. This is everything that lives in the same areas as of chameleons. It's that's just the environmental conditions that all of them learned to adjust to. The difference is that if you different reptiles have learned to adjust to different niches, and chameleons up in the trees. And so, like for fogging, they have had to develop a way. They don't have standing water around them. They're not going to go down to the ground for a puddle. They don't have bromeliads. They just being up in the trees, they need a way of drinking and or hydrating. We won't say drinking, hydrating. And so that's why they developed that. An animal that's on the ground, it doesn't necessarily need to adapt to making use of the humidity. They can drink liquid water. So there are little differences, but all of these atmospheric conditions that we're talking about, every animal in that area, every animal in Ranamafana National Park, deals with the same environmental conditions. Let's see. So apparently, let's see. Exoterra reptile vision bulb is purple. Yeah, yeah, Natalie. I would say just stick with the white light. There's all of these cheap marketing things. It's really confusing, and unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. But the 6500K is going to give you the best we have now. If we can find bulbs that give more of a spectrum, more of a replication of the daylight spectrum, perfect. Right now, 6500K is the best we got, as far as I know. So, oh, I can get my PhD with this research. Get your dissertation already. That's right. That's right. I don't know if I can go back to school. I don't know if I can handle that. Actually, I loved school. Unfortunately, I don't think I can make a living and go back to school at the same time. Uh, and Perry Planeta is still waiting for the Seahorse Academy. Yeah. Threatened. I was that's referring to a time. There was a time where I actually had to make a decision as to whether I was going to continue with chameleons. I had a life reset moment where I had nothing, and so I was going to either get chameleons again because I had been really involved with chameleons, uh, but chameleons again or get into seahorses, and I decided I almost got. I was looking for seahorses at the time, but I decided I'm getting my chameleons, and so it was back in chameleons, and I've never looked back. So, oh, okay, my friends, it is coming time to close this down. If you have any last questions or comments, please put them in the chat. I really appreciate you coming here and spending this time with me. In the next three, two, at least 2 weeks are going to be, we're going to have some pretty intense conversations. And I'm going to be talking about, and we're going to be continuing this discussion about small stresses. Next week, we're going to be talking about why it's so important that we keep looking to nature to drive our captive husbandry. And we touched on that a little bit today, but I'm really going to hit that hard and explain why it's so important to do that. And then after that, we're going to be going. I'm going to be talking with Peter Netchas, and we're going to be really digging deep into fogging. What is it? What's important about it? How do you execute it? And he's going to come on here. So in 2 weeks, I think in 2 weeks, we'll be able to, Peter will be joining me here. Of course, look at the announcements and you'll see, and then you can ask him clarifying questions, and speak directly. I gotta tell you, trying to do this over social media, just typing in social media, it just goes crazy. So, uh, this is a good chance to just ask in person. So smash that like, guys. Yeah, yeah, guys. If you definitely, please, if you can support this this outreach, give your likes, share it. Let the YouTube know how much this is means to you. It's one of those things that you don't have to spend any money. Just let the algorithm know that you really liked this. So like the video, that helps me out. I appreciate it. I just appreciate that you're all here and we can have this discussion. And I love fielding questions and such. And I really love the fact that people are talking in the chat, and we're building a little Saturday afternoon community here. That is very cool. And look at that right at the end. Thank you, Natalie, very much for supporting. Uh, this is with a super chat. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Natalie. And Susan has her coffee. Excellent, excellent. So, all right, everybody, have a great week. I will be here, not here, but I will be live Tuesday on Instagram. So we will be doing that again. And then we will have a standard week. And so, uh, as always, have a good week, and I will see you next time.